Even though pulling over sounds simple, it's surprising how many people hit the curb or park too far from the curb. So in this video, I'll go through the steps of stopping next to the curb using a combination of spatial awareness and a specific reference point on a car. Now, here are a few things that can happen when pulling over. You could stop too far from the curb like this, hit or mount the curb like this, stop with the front of the car far from the curb, resulting in not being parallel to the curb like this, stop with the back of the car far from the curb like this, or park perfectly like this, which is what we want. So the question is, how can we consistently pull over correctly? So now you may be like, can't I just use my mirrors to pull over? Well, one thing we need to be mindful of is that when we steer a car, only the front wheels turns, not the back wheels. This pretty much applies to most vehicles. When you steer, only the front wheels turns. The back wheels are always straight. Some people think that if you are driving a no-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive car, or the tires turn, but this is not correct. Even if you are driving a no-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive, only the front wheels turns. Yes, it's true that four-wheel steering cars exist, but they are rare as they are too expensive to make, complicated to drive, and hence unnecessary for an everyday driver. So because of the way the steering wheel works, as we steer to the left, the front part of the vehicle gets closer to the curb first. Now, if you think about it, the mirrors are showing you the back part of the car, not the front. So if we rely on the mirrors to pull over, we are going to hit the curb or park too far from the curb. For this reason, we can't rely on the mirrors to pull over correctly. Sure, you might manage to pull over correctly once, twice, or even 3 times, but eventually, consistently relying on the mirrors alone is likely to lead to hitting the curb. And if you hit the curb hard enough, you could damage the rims. In the worst case scenarios, the tires could sustain severe damage and will need to be changed immediately. So, what reference point should we use? As we approach the curb, this is what we see from the driver's position. So what we want to do is to pick a reference point in the middle of the car and line that point up with the top of the curb. The point we want to use is somewhere here, near the middle of the windscreen wipers. But since drivers have different height and sits differently, this point is going to be slightly different for everyone. For me, I line up this portion of the windscreen wipers with the top of the curb. This should work for most people as well, but you need to experiment a bit to find the best point for you. Just make sure the point you pick is somewhere near the middle of the windscreen wipers. So we want to line this point with the top of the curb, and by doing that, we will be close to the curb. Now, for this to work, you need to set up your seat correctly. So you don't want to be sitting too low like this, too high like this, or too relaxed like this. Also, make sure you sit in your normal driving position, because if you lean forward like this or sideways like this technique will not work that well. Alright, so here's how to pull over correctly. The first thing we want to do is, as we approach, we check our rear view mirror and left side mirror and signal left. Next, we want to slow the car down early. So I let the accelerator go and apply a little bit of brakes. The next thing is to steer slightly to the left and start lining our reference point. So about this much steering is enough. If you steer too much, you risk hitting the curb. So now we monitor our reference point, and once we notice that the middle of the windscreen wipers align with the top of the curb, we gently steer to the right to angle out. And I stress, steer gently. The last step is to make the car straight, which is also important. After steering right, we switch our focus for about a second each between this mirror and the front or the horizon. This helps in judging when the car is parallel to the curb. If you stare at the mirror for too long, the car will end up like this. So make sure you switch your focus between looking in the mirror, looking forward, and the horizon. Once aligned, straighten up the steering wheel and stop the car. Then we put the car in park if we are driving an automatic car, or neutral if we are driving a manual car. So now, to make sure that you master this, let's look at how to do this maneuver again. So here I'm driving in this street and I want to pull over and stop next to the curb. The first thing I'll do is check my rear view and left side mirror and signal left. Next, I'm going to come off of the accelerator so that the car starts slowing down by itself. I also start gently steering a little to the left about this much and continue moving until that point on the windscreen wipers gets on top of the curb. So maybe about there. The last part is to steer gently to the right so that the car straightens. I steer and watch the front, the horizon and my mirror. Once I see that the car is straight, I put the steering wheel in a straight position like so. Stop, put the car in neutral since I'm driving a manual car. Of course, if you are driving an automatic car, you will need to put the car in park. Also, if you are driving a manual car and you intend to get out of the car, you want to put the car in first gear or reverse for some extra protection. Now, let's see how we can use this technique to pull over in different situations. I'm gonna be doing a few examples and I'm gonna talk you through what I'm doing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be pulling over in front of the blue car. So I'm gonna check my rear view mirror. I'm gonna check my left side mirror. It's raining a little bit, so hopefully that'll still be okay. And I'm gonna indicate left. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna slow down the car a little bit and I'm gonna start looking out for the reference point, doing a little bit of steering. So not much steering, just a little bit. And then I'm gonna come up to my reference point, which is about there. And I'm gonna steer a little bit to the right when I get there. And then as I steer to the right, I'm watching this mirror. I'm also looking at the horizon to make sure that I'm straight. And I think I'm straight now. So I straighten the wheel and then I stop. If you check there, I didn't actually do much steering wheel. I just did a little bit of steering and then the car gradually came to the left by itself. And I was using that reference point to kind of like measure when I get close enough to the curb. Okay, I'm gonna move off again. Mirror, signal, shoulder check, then move off. And then immediately I'm gonna pull off again on the left in one of the spots. So I'm gonna check my mirrors, I'm gonna indicate left, and then I'm gonna slowly, gradually steer left as I approach the curb. So not much steering. I'm watching my reference point, and maybe about there, I steer away from the curb like this. And then once I feel like I'm straight, I straighten up the wheel, and then I stop. So basically I'm using that reference point, and then once I get close, I check my mirror. I also check the horizon, the front, to make sure that I'm straight before I straighten out the steering wheel. All right, I'm gonna move off. I'm gonna do two more examples. Okay, so I'm gonna be pulling over on the left in front of this car. So this is a little bit more complicated because I have to do a lot of steering, but you can still use the same steps. And I don't know if I'll be able to make this. So I'm gonna come really slow. I'm gonna do a lot of steering to the left. I'm gonna monitor my reference point. Once I feel like I'm close enough, I steer a lot to the right. Because if I don't, I'm not gonna be able to straighten the car on time. And then once I feel like I'm straight, about there, I straighten the wheel and then I stop. Okay, so this is usually more complicated when you are pulling over in front of a car. So when the space is a little bit tight, you need to do a lot more steering, and you need to be very careful that you're not going too fast. Because if you're doing a lot of steering, it's gonna also take a lot of steering to straighten the car. So that's a little bit usually more complicated. Now, the last example that I want to do is I want to pull over right in front of the red car. So that's usually a little bit more complicated, and because I have to pull over right in front of that car, I need to do that in two steps. So I need to, first of all, pull over in front of the car, and then I need to reverse. So I can kind of like still use the same technique of like using that reference point and try and get as close as possible to the curb. And then once I'm close enough to the curb, I straighten my car and then reverse. Of course, if there was another car in front, I won't be able to do that, which means that I have to do a reverse parallel park. So
there are situations whereby you're not going to be able to pull over like front facing. You need to do a reverse parallel park in some cases. So in this case here, we're going to do the forward parking. So I need to wait a little bit. There's a car coming. So I check my mirrors. I'm going to indicate right blind spot, and then I'm going to move off. So I'm going to pull over in front of this car, and then I'm going to reverse afterwards. So mirror, indicator, and then I'm going to use the same reference point as before. So I'm going to steer a bit, quite a lot, because I need to pull over within a certain distance. So come as close as possible. So maybe about there. I think my reference point is there. So now I steer again, a lot of steering to the right, because if I don't steer a lot, I'm going to hit the curb, because I did a lot of steering before. So, and then once I'm looking at the front, I'm looking at the mirror, my car is straight, I straighten the wheel. Once I've straightened the wheel, what I need to do now, I need to now go back in a straight line. So into reverse, go back in a straight line. I'm going to also look behind a bit, because when we're reversing, we want to look behind. And I'm aiming to park right behind that car. So I stop about there, and then I've parked behind that car. So if you are pulling over in front of a car, you need to do it in two movements. You go forwards first, and then you reverse back. If you try and do that in one movement, you are going to be hitting that car. You're probably going to end up hitting the curb, or maybe you might end up being too far from the curb. So come, pull forward, reverse back, and then you should be good. If there was another car parked in front here, what I will need to do is I will need to do a reverse parallel park. Of course, here, if I had a choice, what I would have done is I would have just pulled over behind that car. That would have been way easier, because I would have more time to straighten my car. So always what you want to do when you're parking, choose the best place to park. You don't have to always park in a specific place. For example, if you are on your driving test, the best place to pull over, if your examiner asks you to pull over, will be right behind that car. That will be the best place to pull over, because you would have enough time to adjust everything and correct what you need to correct. If the space is too tight and you can't pull over properly, you just need to go forward and then reverse.
Now, here are some mistakes to avoid when pulling over. Mistake number one is staring at the mirror for too long. In order for you to figure out whether the car is straight, we need to avoid tunnel vision. If you look in one area for too long, you won't be able to tell if the car is straight or not, and the car will be crooked like so or like so. So look at the front and look at the mirror, and we want to keep switching where we focus until we are satisfied that the car is straight. Mistake number two, steering too much. One major error is oversteering. When you turn the steering wheel too much, the car approaches the curb at a sharp angle, making it challenging to align the car parallel to the curb. This increases the risk of hitting the curb. The solution to this would be to steer gently towards the curb, and as soon as the reference point aligns, start straightening up. Mistake number three, steering too late. If we delay steering to the left, we will need to steer sharply, and this delay will complicate our ability to judge the distance from the curb and potentially lead to hitting the curb. The solution to this will be to start your steering maneuver earlier, allowing for gradual and precise adjustments as we approach our desired stopping point. Mistake number four, slowing down last minute. Approaching the curb at high speed is risky. It leaves little time to align our reference point, often resulting in hitting the curb. The key is to slow down early and gradually while steering slightly to the left, so that we have enough time to adjust our reference points. That's all for this video. I hope these tips help improve your parking skills. If you found this video helpful, you can give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more driving related videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.